It's Saturday night, and what am I doing? Studying. All right, I'm studying the equal protection analysis. Just as a reminder, I am a law school student. I'm 47 years old, and so yeah, I'm doing this. So this is a video today is on constitution law, and it's specifically on the analysis that I will be doing for equal protection. So if there's a question about equal protection, then this is the analysis that I intend to use. Again, I am a law student, so I'm not a professional on this. If I've done anything amiss, please let me know, because that might help me on my midterms and my bar exam, my final exam. So anyway, equal protection analysis. So this is looking at a law that maybe a state or a federal law that's been put into place, and it looks like there's some sort of violation of the equal protection clause. So there's going to be three different parts to this analysis. One, I'm looking at whether or not the law has a classification. So a law can contain a classification facially, so on its face. There's some sort of classification that the law applies to. For example, maybe the law applies to everyone under the age of 16, or applies to women, or something of that nature. So that is a classification on its face. The other type of classification is in its application. So sometimes laws are put into practice and it seems to have a discriminatory impact, some sort of an effect that affects one particular group of people. So maybe we're looking at gerrymandering or something like that, right? So then we not only have to look at whether or not there's a discriminatory impact, but we also want to see that if there's a discriminatory purpose behind that law, which can be a little bit more challenging to determine, because if there is some sort of discriminatory purpose in that classification or in that law, then they're not really going to state that in the law, and they will likely, legislature could come up with all kinds of different reasons, different purposes for that law. So it is a little bit more challenging to when there's not a when the classification is not on its face. The second part of my analysis is going to be on determining the appropriate level of scrutiny. Okay, so first, trying to determine if there's a classification. Second, I'm going to look at whether or not, or what the appropriate level of scrutiny is to determine if that law is goes against the equal protection clause of the Constitution. So there are three different levels of scrutiny. First, there's strict scrutiny, and then next there's intermediate scrutiny, and then last there's rational basis test. So for strict scrutiny, that applies to classifications based on race, classifications based on citizenship, in most cases, and classifications based on national origin. Okay, so those are all strict scrutiny for those laws, right? They all have to meet the level of strict scrutiny, which means that the law needs to be narrowly tailored to meet a compelling government interest. Okay, for strict scrutiny, the law needs to be narrowly tailored to meet a compelling government interest. Okay, the second level of scrutiny is intermediate scrutiny. Intermediate scrutiny applies to laws that have a classification based on gender. To meet intermediate scrutiny, the law must be substantially related to an important government purpose. Okay, so for intermediate scrutiny, the law must be substantially related to meet an important government interest. Okay, and that applies to laws that are that have a classification based on gender. The next level of scrutiny is the rational basis. So for rational basis, we're looking at everything else that doesn't fit under strict scrutiny or intermediate scrutiny. And so for rational basis, we are going to be looking at whether or not the law is rationally related to a legitimate government interest. Okay, we're looking to see if the law is rationally related to a legitimate government purpose. Okay, and when looking at that rational basis, because that applies to like a lot of classifications, I'm also going to look to see if it's targeted towards a group of people that have a history of being discriminated against, or if it's discriminating against an immutable characteristic, meaning a characteristic that they were born with that they couldn't control, like maybe they were born out of wedlock, or they were born in the United States to parents that were not citizens or something like that, right? So I'm going to be looking at that, although that might work for strict scrutiny, but I'm just going to look and see like if there's an immutable characteristic. And then I'm also going to look to see if those if that particular class of people, the group of people in that classification, if they have political power. If they don't have political power, that needs to be taken into account because they don't have the power to be able to change that law. And so we don't want to make a law that's doesn't fit the correct level of scrutiny if that law can't be easily changed by those people if they don't have a lot of political power. And so I do want to look to see if there is some sort of animus in the law towards a group of people that has been a disfavored group of people, right? Because if under rational basis, if it is discriminating against a group of people, it kind of a disfavored group of people, and it's going against them, then they may apply rational basis with a bite. All right. And then the third part of my analysis is I am going to look to see if the government action meets the required level of scrutiny. So I'll be doing this by looking at two things. And this one, I always have to remember the two different steps because I always want to just jump right into it. But I need to just slow down, take a deep breath, and then go and look at what the purpose is of the law. Okay. So what is the purpose behind the law? I want to talk about what that purpose is. Then I'm going to talk about whether or not the means employed by that law fit. If there's a nice fit between that and the purpose of the law. Okay. So I've done it nice and easily. I've talked about what the purpose is. Now I'm looking to see if the employment of that law, the purposes, or the way that it's being employed is going to fit the correct level of scrutiny. Okay. And when I say fit the correct level of scrutiny, I'm talking about whether a law is over-inclusive or under-inclusive. Okay. So for strict scrutiny, I want to have like a nice tight fit for that to work. Like that purpose and the means in which it's being employed, that needs to be pretty tight. Not a lot of wiggle room. Okay. It's only affecting that group of people. It's not kind of affecting like everyone. And so that way we're helping these people. No, that's over-inclusive. Or under-inclusive, it just affects just like it's so small like that it's not even going to be able to meet the purpose behind that law, right? That purpose is not going to be met. And then for intermediate scrutiny, the fit doesn't have to be as tight, but it still needs to be pretty darn tight. Like for strict scrutiny, it pretty much has to be like there's no other way. Like this is the way, right? Intermediate scrutiny, there's a little bit more wiggle room for that. But we're going to be, here we're looking at at gender. So you're really going to be looking at like why do we have this law? Like, is it because there's some sort of like traditional rules that's being protected? If that's the case, like that's not really cool. Okay. And then for rational basis, that is a lot more loose. So for rational basis, um, pretty much you just have to have some sort of legitimate government interest, right? Um, or sorry, what, sorry, I just got mixed up there. Yeah, a legitimate government interest. So there just has to be a legitimate government interest, and the way in which it's employed, it just needs to have some sort of rational relationship there. So it's a lot bigger. And I mean, if a law, just has, one little rational basis, like it's pretty much all good to go. So anyway, that's something to think about. So this was the equal protection analysis. I've got a midterm in 2 weeks, so hopefully I'll have it even more solidified by the time I take that midterm, and it'll probably be on my final exam. And hey, I'm pretty sure it'll probably be on the bar. So hopefully it helps you, helps me as we go about studying. Happy studying. Happy Saturday.